Among the black sand, under the silver moonlight, a woman collapsed. Her body was covered in sand. Her muscles were bleeding, and she was barely covered by a torn piece of cloth. Her hands trembled, and her breathing was so weak, it felt like there was only one last fragile thread keeping her alive. She opened her eyes, dark and deep like a stone abyss. Her voice was so faint it barely formed sound. "Take me away. I will be yours tonight. If not, I will die out here." Cole said nothing. He did not ask for her name. He did not ask about her past. He simply wrapped his coat around her shoulders and lifted her onto his horse. His chest burned, not because of her desperate offer, but because of the despair inside that voice and the horror she must have gone through. He turned his horse, urging it forward quickly into the cold night. The wind stretched out behind them. The desert was silent. Only a lone cowboy remained, and a Comanche warrior taking her last breaths. On the road toward a second chance at life, Cole brought her back to his old ranch on the edge of Red Mesa. He laid her on the bed and lit a fire. The flames flickered across Sada's blood-streaked body, her strong muscles dusted with dirt. She said nothing more. She just breathed heavily, each breath slicing into her chest like a blade. Cole tore strips of cloth, cleaned her wounds, and wrapped them one by one. He moved slowly, carefully, without a single indecent gesture, without a single predatory glance. Every movement felt like he was trying to mend a body torn apart by the world. When she opened her eyes again, she asked in a hoarse whisper, exhausted, "Why? Did you not take advantage of me?" I made it clear what I offered. Cole did not meet her eyes. He just answered as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You are falling apart. I do not want to hurt you any more than life already has." For the first time since she had escaped, Saita cried, and it was not from fear. She cried because the man in front of her did not treat her like a thing to be used. That night, she slept deeply. Cole sat by the fireplace the whole night, holding a cup of cold coffee, eyes fixed on the door. Anyone who has been through war knows someone would come looking for her. And this night, this peace might just be the quiet before the real storm. The next morning, Sayata woke to the blaze of red sunlight pouring in. She looked around the modest wooden house. Cole's poverty was not filthy. It was clean. It was honest. It was the kind of poverty that belonged to a man who still had his dignity. She tried to sit up, trembling. Cole brought her water and said gently, "You do not owe me anything. I just need you to stay alive." Her throat tightened. She had never heard that before. She looked at him, her eyes for the first time no longer guarded. "I will not forget." Cole stood up, grabbed his saw, picked up a hammer. "Get some rest. I will be out by the cattle shed." The door closed behind him. Inside that house, in that space, with no love spoken, no promises made, something strange had begun to take root. Not love, but a feeling of safety. And out in the West, maybe that is the rarest thing of all. It took Seda a week before she could walk around the small house. Her first steps on the ranch's wooden floor sounded like someone relearning what it meant to be human. Cole did not push her. He just let things come on their own. Let them flow, like desert wind brushing through the distant fields of cactus. In the mornings, Cole would brew black coffee and place it on the table. Sayata would sit across from him, a blanket wrapped around her chest, her hand still trembling as she held the cup. But she still tried to drink. To her, it was not just coffee, it was proof she was still here. In the world of the living, not the world of creatures that hunt people. On the 10th day, she got up and cleaned the kitchen, washed the dishes, wiped the floor. Cole said, "You do not have to do that." She replied softly, "I want to stand on my own feet, otherwise I am still just a prisoner." That afternoon, Cole took her out to the yard to practice shooting. The wind was strong. Sayata raised the Colt, heavier than she had imagined. The first shot missed the target completely. Cole said, "It is all right. I missed 100 shots before I hit one." She looked at him. "Were you ever afraid?" He was silent for a moment, then answered, "In war, everyone is afraid. The only difference is, some people can hide it, and some cannot." That was the first time Sayata saw Cole open a door inside his soul. Slowly, gently, no drama, no bitterness, just a man telling the truth of his life. She started cooking, cutting beef, gathering firewood. learning to read horse tracks the way Cole showed her. Each day, little by little, she returned to her primal strength, but this time, it was the strength of someone who chose to live, not someone forced to survive. In the evenings, they shared dinner at a small table. No one spoke of the future. No one named the thing growing between them. Some things in the West, the more you try to name them, the faster they vanish like dust in the wind. And then one night, just before Cole turned off the lamp, Sayita spoke softly. "Do you know, I have never had a home before?" Cole turned back to look at her, his eyes kind but tired. "Then think of this place as temporary. When you want to leave, just tell me. I do not lock anyone in." Sayita bowed her head. No one had ever said that to her before. That night, she lay in bed, listening to the wind outside the wooden roof, and for the first time in many years, she had a peaceful sleep. The season of soft winds began to settle over the red earth. They started living like two people sharing the same roof, even though neither had said a word about it. In the mornings, Sayita woke earlier than him. She carried water, lit the stove, and herded the cattle out of the barn. Cole just watched silent, but he knew she was not doing it to repay him. She did it because she wanted to stand as an equal, never bowing to anyone again. One evening, a gentle rain began to fall. Cole sat fixing a saddle strap, and Sayita sat beside him, tying knots one by one. They were so close, it only took a breath to feel the other's heartbeat. Sayita asked softly, "Do you think two strangers can become each other's home?" Cole did not look at her. He only answered in a voice low enough not to ripple the water in the glass before him. "In this life, I think that might be the only thing still true." They fell silent, but the silence was not avoidance. It was safety. The kind of safety Sayita had never known. The kind Cole thought he no longer had the right to feel. From then on, every task on the ranch was no longer divided. They did everything side by side, step by step. No one above, no one below. Sometimes, Cole spoke of the war, of the smell of gunpowder the day he had to bury his comrades with his bare hands because there was no shovel left. Sayita would place a hand on his shoulder without saying a word. And on other nights, Sayita told him about the times she was tied up like an animal. Cole would listen, without judgment, and in a way that was slow, gentle, and deeply human. They stitched up the holes inside one another. Not lovers, just two people who found a place to let their hearts rest for a while. At night, when Cole turned off the lamp, Sayita would whisper in the dark, "If I disappear tomorrow, do you think this place will feel emptier?" Cole replied, "Yes. I think I would lose my reason for drinking coffee every morning." Sayita let out a small laugh, a laugh as quiet as two keys brushing against each other. But it lit up the entire house. From that moment on, there were no more borders between them. They might never give it a name, but both of them knew. This was home. Thank you for being here with me. If this story brought back memories of dusty afternoons and the sound of horse hooves echoing in your heart, subscribe to my channel. So every day, we can sit together again. And I will tell you another story from the West. It felt like everything might stay peaceful forever. One afternoon, with the sun halfway down behind the red rocks, Cole was nailing a new board onto the cattle barn. Sayita was carrying a bucket of water from the well. The wind was still gentle. The sky still looked like a whispered forgiveness. Then Cole's horse suddenly jerked its head. It smelled something. The scent of metal. The scent of old blood. Sayita froze. Her eyes narrowed quickly like a panther spotting the tracks of a hunter. She spoke softly, just loud enough for Cole to hear. "They are coming." Cole did not ask who. He knew exactly who. Bounty hunters. The same men who once chained her like an animal. The sun dropped another notch. Sayita opened the gun cabinet, pulled out a Colt, spun the cylinder. Her hands did not shake, but her breaths were deeper than usual. Cole placed a hand on her shoulder. "You do not have to fight alone anymore." That sentence, to Sayita, was stronger than any army. Night fell. They turned the lights off early. They did not sleep. They sat in the dark, listening to the earth brushing against the wind and to the distant sounds of wild animals. Sayita spoke slowly. "The day they caught me, I prayed to die more than once." Cole stared at the door, his eyes heavy like old trees. Some people die even while they are still breathing. Sayita did not reply, but in her heart she knew, if Cole had turned away that night, she would not still be here. When the moon rose, they heard hoofbeats in the distance. Slow, heavy. Seta adjusted her shirt, tied the old torn cloth around her waist like a vow that her past would no longer drag her down into the sand. She said quietly, her voice rough like cracking stone, "Tomorrow. I want to end this. No more running." Cole answered, "Tomorrow, we do what needs to be done." Then the moonlight spilled through the wooden window, casting the two of them like shadows standing on the line between life, death, and freedom. Out here in the West, the scariest thing was not the bounty hunters. It was two shattered souls, who now knew how to stand beside each other, and were ready to fight life. For the very first time, the next morning, there was no sunlight. The entire sky was covered in a layer of red dust, like ashes from an old battlefield. Saita stood in front of the barn, her hand resting on the Colt at her hip. Cole stood beside her, quietly adjusting the gun belt around his waist. No one spoke, because both of them knew today would not be like any other day. The sound of hooves echoed, again and again. 3 figures appeared on the edge of the hill, the same men who once chained her like an animal. They stopped their horses at the ranch gate, faces twisted in that familiar arrogance of men who believe they have the right to put a price on a woman. The leader sneered, "Well, Comanche, you are looking healthier. I came to take back what belongs to me." Cole stepped forward half a pace, his voice steady and low. "She does not belong to anyone." The man laughed, throwing his head back. "You think a cowboy like you can stop me?" No one said anything else. The dry ground, the desert wind whipped up red sand like a sideways rain. Then violence came fast. Horses screamed. Gunfire exploded. Cole dropped the man on the right with a single shot, clean, cold, and precise like someone who had fired in war. The second man panicked, pulled a knife, and lunged at Cole. Saeta took 1 step forward. She did not flinch. She simply raised her gun and pulled the trigger. The bullet whizzed past the leader's ear and slammed into the wooden post behind him. The red dust lit up in a long streak across the air. She did not kill. She warned. But that warning was heavier than death. The leader froze, because he understood. The woman he once saw as an object was now 1,000 times stronger than him. Strong because she was no longer afraid. Just then, the sheriff rode in, having waited in ambush after Cole's letter the night before. He tied them up and threw them onto the wagon. The sheriff leaned in and said quietly to Cole, "Not many people protect what is right when no one is watching." Cole just shook his head. "I am not protecting honor. I am protecting someone who survived." The sheriff nodded, and the wagon rolled off into the red dust. The barn door closed. The wind settled, as if the fight had never happened. Saita stood for a long moment, then dropped her gun to the ground. Cole placed a hand on her shoulder lightly, like placing a hand on a wild animal just freed from its chains. She took a deep breath and spoke, like setting herself free. "I do not owe them anything anymore." Cole looked her in the eye, calm and steady. "No. From now on, you only owe yourself. To live in a way that is worthy." The storm of life had passed, and now, spring was coming. The next morning, the sky over Arizona turned a strange, brilliant blue. Saeta opened the ranch door and stood watching the distant fields, the sunlight shining on every strip of land, as if the earth itself was learning how to breathe again. She walked barefoot across the still damp ground, and it felt like every step she took was a step back into her own body, into her true soul. No longer priced. No longer called by the name the bounty hunters had given her. Just Saeta, a human being. Cole was quietly repairing the barn roof. He hammered each nail, fitted each plank, like a man used to rebuilding everything that had once fallen apart in his life. At noon, Saita brought out a handful of seeds into the yard. She said, "I want to plant something. Something that can last here longer than fear." Cole looked at her and gave a slight nod. This land would be good for spring grass. Saita smiled just a little, and in that moment, he saw her as beautiful, in the strongest way a person can be beautiful. The kind of beauty that comes from standing up after walking through hell. Days later, word began to spread. Women who had lost their families, men pushed off the frontier, a few children no one had claimed, started showing up at the ranch of Cole and Saita. They did not come begging. They came to work, to trade shelter for a chance to live. Cole would ask each of them softly, "You have nowhere else to go?" Most answered the same way, "No." But if this land allows people like us, we will earn our place. Sayata turned no one away. She made no promises. She simply said, "Here, everyone has a place." And so, one by one, night by night, fire by fire, the ranch began to grow. More tents went up. People who had lost all hope began laughing again over dinners that smelled of coffee and cornbread. Cole and Seita never talked about what they were to each other. They did not have to. One afternoon, Seita handed Cole a leather Comanche bracelet and tied it around his wrist without meeting his eyes. "We only tie this for someone who walks with us." Cole stood silent for a moment, then held her hand. As his answer, that spring, they both knew it clearly. They had walked out of the dark, and this ranch was finally becoming a true home. Summer arrived late. The ranch of Cole and Seita was no longer just a tiny cabin among the red rocks. It had become a community. Women who had lost their husbands, men who had lost their land, children who had been abandoned. One by one, they came to this place. They set up tents, planted beans, patched up the barn, built fences, carried wood, and laughed together over dinners that smelled of coffee and burning pine. No one asked about the past. They only asked, "What part should we start on tomorrow?" And that alone made the West kinder than it had ever been before. Cole and Seita did not speak love in the way the world was used to. They were not the kind to make promises beneath the stars or whisper vows into the wind. They chose each other by standing on the same side every morning they woke up. Until one day, just as the sun was about to set, the whole community gathered beneath a large cypress tree in the ranch yard. Cole took Seita's hand for the first time in front of everyone. "Will you stay here with me for the rest of your life?" Seita looked him straight in the eyes. She simply placed his hand over her heart and said, "I have belonged to this place for a long time now. No priest needed." The community clapped in the evening wind. That was enough. From then on, the ranch had an unspoken rule. This was a place where those once treated like garbage could come back as fertile soil. In the seasons that followed, children ran laughing across the yard, no one caring about the color of their skin, the blood in their veins, or the gods they worshipped. People who had once been cast aside like weeds rebuilt their lives with their own two hands. As for Cole and Seita, each morning they stood together on the front porch. They said nothing grand. They just looked out at the fields, as if looking at a West that no longer cut down the weak, but became a place where people could rewrite their meaning. It all began one desert night, with a man who chose to stop his horse, and a muscular Comanche woman who was dying but still managed to whisper, "Take me with you, or I will die out here." Turns out, sometimes God does not send down angels. Sometimes, God just sends someone who does not turn away, and that alone is enough to rebuild a whole new world on red soil. Out here, in this land full of hatred, kindness is the rarest thing, but it is also the strongest weapon. Those who choose to help without asking for anything in return, they are the ones who hold on to the last bit of light, because sometimes all it takes is one hand reaching out to change the fate of an entire life. And in the end, I always wish you peace and happiness. No matter what comes, always stand on the side of the light, my friends. I love all of you, my beloved audience of Wild West storytelling. Tell me what you felt about this story. Leave a comment down below. Type the number 1 if this story spoke to your heart. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more dramatic tales from the Wild West.